Here we have a 2021 Corolla with the M20A FKS motor. In today's video, we are going to replace the engine coolant bypass valve. Now this bypass valve is a little different from the ones in the RAV4. As you can see, this one doesn't have the hose attached to it. So it makes the job a little bit more easier than the RAV4. Less part would need to be removed to do this job. Now the code you might get, if you go look on the text stream in the ECM, you're going to get a P268115 code stored, indicating that the engine coolant bypass valve circuit is short to battery. Now to do this job, you are going to need to remove the battery. And by doing this, it's going to make it so much easier. It's going to expose a lot of room to get your hands in there to do the job. We want to disconnect the negative cable first. Next, the positive cable. Remove the battery, and if you look down inside, you're going to see the engine coolant bypass valve there. There's a connector right there you want to remove. You got the upper hose. You just want to do as much as you can to free up the vacuum hoses around it, so that way you can make it easier for you to get your hand in there. Now you want to start off by removing the connector first. Now behind that, there's another bolt that it's not really that easy to see. But if you come on the passenger side, this is a passenger side view. You see there's a 12mm bolt there. And I'll show you guys how to get it in a second. Back to the driver's side by the battery tray. You see how it's hard to see that bolt from this angle? But you want to leave the bolt there first. You don't want to take it off because you're going to need to disconnect these upper and lower hoses from the bypass valve. Having the bypass valve secured, it makes it easier to remove these hoses and the tabs. So you want to pull and release on these tabs, and that's going to allow the hose to disconnect. Now it's going to help if you drain it, because that's what I try to do. I try to cheat it by not draining the coolant, and as you can see, so many coolant spilled out, and I don't want to make a mess. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the coolant reservoir cap, and I'm going to lift the vehicle up to drain the coolant from the radiator and from the cooling system. Now right under the driver's side wheel area, that's where the radiator is. You're just gonna make your way through the splash shield underneath. And I like to attach a hose there on the petcock so it doesn't make a mess on top of the splash shield. And in that way I can kind of direct the coolant down to the coolant drain bucket. And that's what I'm doing there. Otherwise, it's just gonna make a mess all over the splash shield. And to get access to that, I just removed the two 10mm you see there, a couple screws right around the driver corner area, driver front corner. Now once I do that, I'm able to pop that lower hose off without making a mess everywhere. I already got my electrical connector disconnected. Now I'm going to try to disconnect that upper hose. Like I said, whatever you need to remove, I'm just removing a vacuum hose to make it easier and so I can have more room to do it. And with a little angled pick, just kind of get in there. You don't have to be rough or aggressive. Nice little tug on the tabs and it'll pop up with a flathead screwdriver or pry bar. Gently kind of tug on it. Apply some pressure upward, and that should pop it up. Now I got both holes disconnected, and now I'm going to make my way to remove the bolt. The 12mm bolt on the other side. That's it right there. You can get it with a 3/8 ratchet or a 1/4 inch, but it's on there pretty tight. So I'm just going to use my 3/8 impact just to kind of break it loose. Because you can get it with a 1/4 inch ratchet, like I said, or a 3/8, but you're more likely to bang your knuckles on something. So I'm going to make my life easier and just use my 3/8 to break it loose, and I'm going to remove it by hand the rest of the way. Now I got the 12mm bolt out. And now the bypass valve should be able to come up. Like I said, this one on the Corollas is a lot easier than the RAV4. The RAV4, you get the hose attached to it, but on the Corollas, you can get just the valve. Now I'm ready for install. And I'm just going to do everything in reverse, guys. Now I'm going to mount it on that bracket. It helps if you already have it centered on the lower hose to kind of keep it from falling down. And that way it makes it easier to line up on that bracket it mounts to with that 12 millimeter bolt back. And I'm just gonna finish tightening it with a 3/8 ratchet. Now going to install the hose, I like to put a little grease around the bypass valve. It helps the hose slide on easier and it minimizes the potential to damage the O-rings inside. Now I'm gonna connect my vacuum hoses back. Everything I pretty much removed out my way to make it easier for me. I'm just gonna reconnect, making room to connect my battery, or making room to reinstall my battery, I should say. That's what I'm gonna do there. Connect my positive terminal first. Then I'm gonna connect the negative terminal. Put down, reinstall my hold down with the 12 millimeter bolt. Now I got the bypass hose installed, battery installed. Now it's time to get ready to clean the splash shield. But you are going to make a mess one way or another. So you want to do a clean job. Right now I'm just cleaning all the coolant that spilled. And all I did was remove the little access cover that blocks the oil drain plug. And I was able to get a air nozzle in there to kind of blow off the excess coolant. You want to do a clean job. You don't want to leave a mess. And now it's time to bleed the cooling system. Now I'm going to add coolant to the cooling reservoir. And I'm just going to fill the reservoir up to max capacity. And then I'm going to start the car and allow the engine water pump to help circulate the coolant in the reservoir throughout the system. Now I'm going back out and I'm going to remove this little plug right there. I'm going to remove it to leave it exposed. And as the engine is running, I'm going to continuously fill up that reservoir and kind of monitor the max and minimum level. And while the car is running, while I'm bleeding out the system, I like to turn the AC off and set the temperature inside to max heat because I want to make sure all the coolant is circulated through the heater core. Last thing you want to do is for the customer to leave and they don't have no heat. So you want to make sure all the cooling is circling throughout the system and it's making its way in the heater core. And I'm revving the engine up to 2000 RPM to allow the water pump to really circulate all the coolant throughout the system. In this process, you're going to have to repeat it multiple times to ensure you get all the air pockets out of the system. You want to leave the car running until the coolant temperature inside the combination meter at least reaches halfway, keeping an eye on it to make sure it doesn't overheat. This is not something you want to do and you walk away. Now I'm just going to clean the reservoir off with some brake clean. And that's pretty much all there is to it, guys. As you can see, it's a lot more easier than the RAV4. The RAV4 is a little bit more complicated because of the way it's routed. But for the Corolla, it's 10 times easier. So this shouldn't be a costly job or repair, as you can see in this video. So at least now you know if you ever run into the trouble of having your engine maintenance required light on. At least now you guys know what the fix is. If you find this video informative, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. As always, thanks for watching.